episode 175 of Futures Radio Show, sponsored by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com.
Every day, traders and investors dive in to tackle the ever-changing markets to find opportunity. Futures Radio Show is your number one source for answers to the questions that all market participants want to ask. Veteran futures trader Anthony Crudele sits down with the most influential leaders and top traders in the industry. Now, here's your host, Anthony Crudele.
Hey everyone, before we get started today, I want to thank our sponsors. CME Group, Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and Top Step Trader. Now today I spoke with Kim Trautmann, Director of DRW Venture Capital. Now I'm always interested in what the top firms are investing in, and today Kim gives us an inside look at DRW Venture Capital. We spoke about Chicago's role in the FinTech scene, what makes DRW VC different from other VC firms, the process they go through to choose a company to invest in, and a list of companies that they are investing in. I asked Kim what excites her the most about 2018 and what trends she expects to see this year and beyond. As usual, thank you all for listening, and please enjoy this episode. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show today, Kim. Now, we have a lot to discuss today. Going to be talking about venture capital, what's going on at DRW. But before we begin, Kim, tell us how you got your start in the venture capital space.
I've been investing in ventures and financial technology for over a decade. I started my career at Goldman Sachs in 2006, where I was working in the Principal Strategic Investment Group in the Securities Division. And that group invested in FinTech before it was really known as FinTech, and in some of the companies that are core infrastructure to the markets today. So I learned through so many interesting projects. And prior to Goldman, I had explored some businesses of my own, but more on the artistic side. So I started a jewelry business in college where I sold jewelry that I made to stores wholesale. My family had some businesses that I had helped with growing up and had learned from. And later in life helped my dad and grandpa sell their company. So I've always been around people that are building companies, have always been interested in that process, and now help the companies in our portfolio every day with thinking through theirs.
Oh, I love it. I love how it's really been a part of you your whole life, and now you get to go out and live it. And you're doing it with a great company, DRW. Those three letters are pretty well known in the futures industry. I actually started my career at CME Group, and I was in the Eurodollar pit for a year, so I know who Don is, and DRW is a massive player right now in the futures industry. So when we were going to talk about VC, I was like, okay, I want to know, how is this fitting into DRW? I mean, I know them obviously as a trading company, but talk to us about what's going on with DRW and VC.
DRW was founded in 1992 by our CEO, Don Wilson, and the heritage of the firm is trading. But since the firm was founded, we have now over 800 employees. We're a global firm. We invest in real estate, we invest in cryptocurrencies, and then there's VC. DRW VC is investing in companies that are in the financial technology space. So similar to DRW and all of DRW's core businesses, we are out in the markets meeting with companies that are in the same space that we are, investing in those businesses, and then beyond our dollars, we are providing liquidity to platforms. We are helping to think through patents. We are providing technology and technology expertise, and then, of course, opening up our network to those businesses to help them move the needle.
How long has DRW been in the VC space?
DRW has been in the VC space since before I joined the firm. The partners had made investments in companies, some in FinTech, some outside of FinTech. Today, we're focused primarily on FinTech businesses, but it was a natural evolution for the firm to move into venture. The firm's entrepreneurial, the firm is on the leading edge of tech. So incorporating other people's businesses and investments in them into our strategy made complete sense. And I was so excited to join the firm and help move this initiative forward. I moved here from New York to do this work.
Yeah, speaking of coming from New York to Chicago, talk to us about how Chicago is playing a role in the FinTech scene.
Chicago is the epicenter of the derivatives market. The FinTech investing community here is unlike none else. Compared to New York, the community is so close. The investors get together regularly to talk about new opportunities. There's an incredible amount of talent in Chicago, and living here, coming from New York, I can say I've loved the change. The schools that we have here to pull talent from are great. So for companies that are looking for a new office or a new home, I think Chicago is a perfect spot.
Who's got the better pizza?
Chicago. I love the deep dish, but my first time having it was when I moved here, so it was a whole new experience.
You know, it's funny to me that you say deep dish. See, I grew up in Chicago, and I never really ate deep dish. We always had thin crust, but different. You know, we don't cut it in pie slices, we cut them across, you know, so
yeah.
I don't know, that's probably a little adjustment coming from New York, but all in all, I do think that we own the pizza space, and it's good to hear that the FinTech scene is doing well there as well. Now, you're the director of VC at DRW, and you explained to us how it fits into DRW Trading and the DRW company, but what makes you guys different from other VC firms?
So outside of the fact that we are operating a business ourselves and we've been moving the needle in the space to lead with technology here at the firm, we are nimble. So we're quick. We can fund quickly. We can make decisions quickly. Our process is effectively DRW VC meeting with companies, evaluating their business models, and then if the opportunity makes sense, we can either lead directly in an investment, we can loop in a syndicate of other investors, or we can co-invest with someone who brings us an opportunity. So we're flexible there. We can be creative. So as an example, we've provided liquidity to some of our founders through secondaries and early employees. We can engage from the start in a secondary. So typically you're looking at rounds that companies raise in primary capital, so capital that goes directly into the business. But we're able to engage in the first round in a secondary to get an interest in the business started. That's a little bit different than other firms. It shows that we're able to be accommodating of different situations that might arise. And lastly, on structure, we are flexible as well. So we can invest in equity, but we can also invest in debt or provide a loan to a company if it makes sense.
So where does DRW VC provide the most value as an investor?
The sweet spot for the firm is where we can be a customer of our company, where we can help advise on the technology that the company is building, where we can provide IP or ideas around how to shape IP. And we're able to bring our diversified business to the table to help do that. So there's lots of resources here that I can pull from to help a company, whether it's a trader to look at a new platform or a technologist to dig into the tech. We can pull either of those things and more to help that company grow and to get the right feedback so they can iterate.
Yeah, well, if there's one thing we all know about DRW is that you guys can provide a lot of good resources. Now, I want to get to the nitty gritty here. At every show I attend, everybody I talk to in the industry is always wondering, what is Don looking at next? What is DRW getting into now? And it just seems like you guys are always ahead of the curve in everything that you do. So can you tell us what types of companies is DRW VC investing in?
We have a lot of interesting companies in the portfolio. One that was relatively recent is a company called DRW that we invested in 2016. DRW is a company in the regulatory tech space, and what they do is they digitize regulatory rules and they insert them into process that helps traders and compliance officers real time make decisions faster and better. And they then archive that decision process. So an example of how this would work is if you were a US swaps dealer trading with an Asian counterparty and you're sitting at your desk, do you have to trade that product on an exchange? Do you have to clear it? Do you have to report it, and where and when? These are all questions that DRW can answer for you real time. And then at that time, they will archive that decision tied back to the text of the underlying rules. So that is awesome technology to help distribute the knowledge of what is regulation and how it impacts your trade. It helps you think about how to set up your trade in light of that. And they're doing phenomenally well. They're also looking to expand into other verticals because obviously that technology is applicable in more than just financial services. But that's one that I'm really excited about. Another is Pico. They have an office here in Chicago. Pico is a hosting and managed services company. They specialize in trading technology. DRW helps that company by being a customer on one hand, but also obviously as an investor. When we invested, we brought in a couple of local firms to invest alongside us, and we've been invested since 2017.
Well, I can't go a show without talking about crypto assets. So are there any crypto or blockchain companies that DRW VC is investing in?
DRW has a subsidiary called Cumberland, which is the largest liquidity provider in the world for crypto. The firm has been involved in the space since 2012 and formally since 2014. DRW VC is working with Cumberland to evaluate ICOs and selectively participate in them. So on that side of the world, we have participated in a handful of initial coin offerings. And then separate and apart, but related to that, we have invested in the equity of companies in the space. We have an investment in Simplex, Monero, Bitfury, Digital Asset Holdings, which is a company that Don co-founded. And most recently, we invested in BitGo, which is a custody solution for enterprise customers in storing safely crypto.
Kim, I'm interested in what happens behind the scenes. We've talked about several of the companies that you guys are investing in, but I want to know how you come to the decision to invest in a company. Can you walk us through the process a little bit?
Mm-hmm. We meet with a lot of companies and we spend that first half hour typically talking with them about what they're doing. And that involves them bringing to us their business pitch and hopefully some analytics around it. So I love analytics and I like to look at trends. So I want to see how the business is scaling. I want to see how the founder expects it will scale if it hasn't scaled yet. I want to see numbers around the competitive landscape, the market opportunity, the sizing, and how that company is planning on tackling it. I'm an investor and on the advisory board on the personal side in a company called Motherly, which is the fastest growing parenting site now. And when I first looked at that business, it was a startup and they had no revenue. But the CEO, Jill Koziel, and her co-founder, Liz, they sold the vision of what that would be so well. They put numbers around it. They had a great story. And a couple of years later, it's now the fastest growing parenting site. It's been amazing to watch that. But what she's always done awesome is she's always tracked metrics. For funds that we've looked at in the past, for companies that we look at today, I always want to see the numbers. I care a lot about that. And then we look at the structure, the valuation, and obviously the vision. So if the vision falls into place and the market opportunity is right, then we look at the structure of the transaction. And it's a similar perspective on looking at numbers, but sort of from the opposite side of how are we going to structure this investment and how are we going to generate a return for the firm? And there, it's important to think through what the deal terms look like, and we spend a lot of time there.
Now, is there a minimum amount of revenue that you're looking for when you're looking at these companies?
Yes. So the sweet spot target for us is $5 million plus. And that might seem high to some companies, but if the company has slightly less than 5, but has a great story and vision, we can lean a little bit outside of the target. But what we want to see is traction and adoption. We want to see scale. We want to see a company that has some maturity. And that's where we're typically getting involved. And we will invest $1 to $5 million for a first check in these businesses.
To me, it sounds like you guys are primarily focused on FinTech companies. Are you taking a look at any other companies outside of FinTech?
We look at companies that are tangential to FinTech, like data is a good example. So companies that are in the data space, they're selling data, maybe they're selling it in the advertising world. Could they repurpose that data for financial services? We have a team that looks at alternative data sources. Not all seem to be applicable to FinTech, but sometimes there's an opportunity to take a data set and make that applicable to FinTech. So a good example of what that might look like is, surveillance data. So that's not an unusual example, but people have been using surveillance data to count number of cars in the parking lot for a handful of years since alternative data really became popular. And so we're looking at companies, not necessarily surveillance data, but other companies that have data that could be applied to financial services, and then helping those companies think through how to do that.
What are you most excited about heading into 2018?
I am very excited about crypto. Last year was an incredible year, but I think still many people they were just getting up to speed on what is crypto and what does it mean and how does a bank, for example, get involved in the space. This year, I think we're going to see more products. I think we're going to see more opportunities to help shape what institutional trading of that asset looks like. And I think we're going to see continued growth.
So when it comes to the crypto space, I was actually just having a conversation with Jack Tater about this. And there's one thing that I see happening in the industry is we go from talking about price of Bitcoin and all these crypto assets to now the business side, I think is going to come in. And so I agree with you. I think that is really where the action comes. So give us an idea of what you see happening in the crypto space.
It's maturing. So we're seeing a lot of interest in the space and a lot of interest in the companies around the space, I think more than ever before. We're seeing a lot of people trying to shape the future of it. So this is everything from exchanges to trading tools to data platforms, and we're looking at it all.
You are so right. I totally agree with that. I don't think there's any one aspect to focus on in crypto. I think it's all aspects are going to see growth in 2018 and beyond. Now, aside from crypto, what are some trends you expect us to see?
So on the FinTech side, AI and machine learning continuing to take a bigger role in how people do their jobs. I think we'll continue to see that. DRW VC invested in a company called Celerity that brings data and context together with workflow automation, and they're using AI to process content. So they're tracking tens of thousands of relevant to FinTech news sources, everything from the Twitter fire hose to the traditional news outlets, and they're improving process for people. So you may not know this, but to put it into perspective, I believe the stat is 70 to 90% of sell-side salespeople do not, or 70 to 90% of sell-side sales conversations with clients are not logged in a CRM. And that's really due to just time constraints and the manual data entry component. So what Celerity does is they systematically and automatically scrape from chat and populate into CRM so that if a customer comes to ask for a particular bond, for example, and maybe on that day there's no availability, Celerity in the future, when that bond becomes available or when another customer comes, they not only scrape the chat, but they're able to resurface to that salesperson that this inventory is now available, this customer wanted it. And they do that automatically without the salesperson having to log anything. So that's really interesting. And I can see how the Celerity platform will help people get their jobs done better. And there's other examples of how they're doing this as well, but I think that's sort of the most pertinent and meaningful one right now, since there's so much data coming at us, and being able to filter it in a smart way is increasingly important.
Fantastic insight, Kim. Thank you so much for sharing, but we're not done yet. We have rapid fire questions if you're ready for those.
I'm ready.
All right, everybody, our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Trading Technologies. Trade the global markets from virtually anywhere with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. Create your account and try it now, free at tryttnow.com. First question, Kim, who has influenced your life the most and why?
My mom and dad. My mom was very creative. She taught me how to paint. My dad, very math oriented. He taught me math. We did flashcards growing up. We did my math homework together. I always had to use a pencil so that if I messed it up, I could fully erase. But he encouraged me to study business in school alongside art, and that really changed my whole career path and opened me up to things that I never would have considered without pursuing business.
What's the number one resource you spend your time on?
I spend my time on email a lot, which isn't exactly a resource, but the newsletters within email that I read every day are ProRata, Fred Wilson, Axios, and Crunchbase.
What's your favorite book about venture capital?
Competition Demystified by Bruce Greenwald.
What's your favorite movie, TV show, or podcast about venture capital?
My favorite VC podcast is How I Built This.
What's the best piece of advice you've received about venture capital?
Don't invest in a founder or a company that you wouldn't work at yourself.
If you can give a piece of advice to firms looking for funding, what would it be?
Get feedback early and listen to it, and leverage your network for introductions to investors.
Now, Kim, if you weren't involved with markets, venture capital, working at DRW, you'd be doing what?
I'd be painting and making stationery.
I love it. It's nobody on this show ever says they'd be doing something else. Not nobody, but most people say that they would be doing something else, either farming or painting. Nobody wants to be at the screens all day. This fast-paced life is what we do, but we'd all like to be doing something a little bit less stressful. As always seems to be the case. I'm in that boat too. Kim, this was great today. Thank you so much for coming on Futures Radio Show. Where can people find you on social media? Well, let's use Twitter. And can you give us a website to follow up with?
Yeah, so DRW's Twitter handle is at DRW Trading, and DRW Venture Capital's website is DRWVC.com.
Awesome. Everybody, you have to go and check out DRW Trading on Twitter and go and check out their website. They are really one of the top companies in our industry. So, Kim, thank you again so much for coming on Futures Radio Show, and I look forward to more conversations with you in the future.
Same here. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for myself or my guests, please visit futuresradioshow.com and sign up to be a premium member for free. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes.